Marcus Webb was 39 years old the morning he buried his mother, and learned that the woman he had spent 11 years building a life with had brought another man to watch him grieve. He had driven to the church in the same gray Dodge Ram he'd owned since 2016, the one with the cracked dashboard and the slow leak in the rear left tire he kept meaning to patch. He wore a suit he had bought off the rack at JCPenney 8 years ago and altered himself. Because he knew how to use a sewing machine, among other things her friends didn't know about him. He sat in the front pew with his Aunt Dolores and his cousin Raymond and his mother's pastor. He held his hands in his lap, and he did not cry, because his mother had told him once, very specifically, crying at funerals was for the people left behind, not for the one doing the leaving. She had said she was going somewhere better, and she expected him to act like he believed her. He believed her. What he had not expected was to turn during the hymn and see Vanessa seated 3 rows back, composed and dry-eyed, with her hand resting on the knee of a man Marcus had never seen before. The man was tall. The man wore a watch Marcus recognized, a Patek Philippe Aquanaut, roughly $21,000 at retail, which was interesting given that Vanessa had told him twice in the last month that their savings account was nearly empty. Nearly empty. The account she knew about. What Vanessa did not know. What she had never thought to ask, not once in 11 years of marriage, was what the name on the other 7 accounts meant, or whose signature was on the building permits for 4 commercial properties in 2 states. Why a man she had privately called Boring Marcus drove a beat-up Ram to his mother's funeral instead of the car he actually owned. She would find out, but first he had a mother to bury. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The coffee was still hot. Marcus Webb sat at the kitchen table of the house he'd grown up in, his mother's house, now formally in his name, though he hadn't moved a single thing, and he cradled the mug in both hands the way she used to, and watched the morning come through the window. Above the sink he had retiled that kitchen himself. The backsplash behind the stove was hand-cut subway tile, charcoal and cream, pattern he had sketched on a napkin at a job site 7 years ago, and saved because he knew one day he'd have a kitchen to put it in. His mother had run her fingers along the grout lines the first time she saw it and said, "You got your grandfather's hands." She had poured him a glass of sweet tea and not said another word about it, which was exactly the kind of praise he understood. Marcus ran a small contracting operation out of Charlotte, or so Vanessa believed. He drove the Ram to work sites. He wore dusty boots. He came home with calluses and quoted cost overruns at dinner, and didn't correct her when she explained his profession to her friends as construction stuff. He had a crew of 12 who called him boss. He had a business account that deposited a modest salary into the joint checking. They shared. He had other accounts elsewhere that Vanessa had never asked about, because people who believed they already understood, a person rarely asked what they were missing. His mother had been the first to notice this about people. "Boy," she used to say, "let folks see what makes them comfortable. Save the rest for when it matters." He had taken that lesson and built a life around it, not out of deception, but out of patience. Some things didn't need to be announced. They needed to be preserved. He had met Vanessa at a fundraiser for a charter school in Noda 11 years ago. She had been laughing at something someone else said, and the sound of it had moved through the room like a bell. She wore a blue dress, and her hair was natural and loose, and when she turned and caught him looking, she hadn't looked away. They had talked for 2 hours beside a buffet table neither of them touched. He had driven her home in the Ram, and she had made a joke about the cracked dashboard, and he had laughed because it was genuinely funny, and she had reached over and touched his hand at the red light on Beatty's Ford, and something in him had settled, quiet and certain, the way concrete settles when it's poured right. He had believed in her for a long time. He kept believing even when things began to feel subtly off. The new perfume she'd mentioned nothing about, The phone tilted face down on the counter when he walked into a room. The canceled dinner plans she'd explained away easily. Too easily, with the particular fluency of someone who'd rehearsed. He told himself it was stress. She had been passed over for a promotion at the marketing firm. She was carrying something. He gave her room to carry it. That was before the funeral. 3 days after they buried his mother, padded envelope arrived at the house addressed to Vanessa. It slid halfway under the doormat and the corner caught in the gap. Marcus picked it up out of habit and felt through the envelope before he thought to stop himself. Something flat, something rigid. A second key. He set it on the counter and went to change out of his work clothes. He did not mention it when she came home. He found the second phone on a Thursday evening in late October, while Vanessa was at what she called her Thursday work dinners. He hadn't been looking. He had been replacing the under-sink trap in the master bathroom, a job he'd been putting off for 2 weeks. And when he reached into the back of the vanity cabinet for the slip-joint pliers he kept there, his hand closed around something that was not a plier. It was a rose gold iPhone in a slim black case. The kind of phone someone bought specifically because it looked nothing like the phone their spouse had seen them use. He held it in his hand for a moment, the weight of it. Then he set it on the edge of the sink and went back to fixing the trap, because he was a builder, and builders finished the job in front of them before they opened the next one. When he was done, when he'd tightened the fittings and run the water, and watched the drain move clean and quiet, he picked up the phone and powered it on. Came to life without a passcode. His hands didn't shake. He read what was there to be read. He read it with the same systematic care he brought to reviewing subcontractor bids, page by page, noting inconsistencies, flagging dates. The messages went back 9 months. The man's name was Derek Hollis. He had an apartment on the south side. He drove a black BMW 5 Series. He called Vanessa V, and she called him D, and the nature of their conversation left very little to interpretation. His face remained perfectly calm. He noted the dates. He cross-referenced them against his own memory. Business trips she had taken, evenings she had worked late, one weekend she'd spent at a girls' retreat in Asheville he'd helped her pack for. He was methodical. He had always been methodical. It was what made him good at what he actually did, which was not simply contracting. He found the financial thread 40 minutes later. She had opened a joint account with Derek Hollis in August. She had been making deposits into it. Small at first, irregular, then larger and more regular, since September. The money was coming from an account he had never seen, which meant she had opened it without him. She had been depositing $3, $200 every 2 weeks for 6 weeks. The total so far was just over $19,000. He sat with that number. He went to his own phone and pulled up 12 months of statements on the account they did share. He found 7 cash withdrawals over 9 months, ranging from $400 to $800. They had been timed to coincide with days he was traveling for work. The total was $9,340. His mother's emergency fund, the one Vanessa had said was being kept in a savings bond, was listed on a joint account document he found in the glove box of Vanessa's car the following morning. He had a key he'd never mentioned having been closed in March. The balance at closure had been $22,000. He opened a new folder on his desktop when he got home. He named it simply Mother. He made one phone call. Patricia, he said, I need an hour tomorrow morning. Bring Ellison if he's available. There was a pause. Patricia Hines had been his attorney for 9 years. Marcus, she said, what did she do? He was quiet for a moment. Everything I was watching for. Patricia Hines kept her office on the 14th floor of a building in uptown Charlotte that Marcus had helped renovate in 2018. He had never mentioned that to her. It was the kind of thing he noted and set aside. She reviewed the documents across her desk without speaking for 11 minutes. Derek Hollis's Social Security number, which Marcus had obtained through a contact he declined to explain. The account statements, the screenshots, numbered and dated, the photograph of the padded envelope and its key. The timeline Marcus had assembled on a single clean sheet of paper. 9 months, 41 specific events organized by date and corroborating evidence. Patricia looked up. She withdrew $22. Sue from a protected savings bond account, she said. My mother's, Marcus said. Patricia set her pen down very carefully. The beneficiary designation on that bond, was it probate protected under your mother's estate? Fully, my name only. Vanessa was never listed. She committed felony financial fraud. Patricia picked her pen back up. Are there children? No. Property in joint name. The house on Archdale, purchased by me before the marriage. Deed was never amended. Patricia made a note. She may not know that. She doesn't. Said, she mentioned the house at dinner last month. She said, our house. I didn't correct her. Patricia sat back. Marcus, how much does she know about you? Your full financial position? He looked at the window for a moment. Below, Charlotte moved in its ordinary midday rhythm, oblivious. She knows about my contracting business, he said. She knows what I deposit into the joint account. She has never asked about the rest. Patricia looked at him steadily. Define the rest. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and placed a single sheet on her desk. She read it. Her expression moved through several stages, each more precise than the last. She looked up. She's been planning to leave a man worth this, Patricia said. Not quite a question. She thinks she's leaving a man worth nothing, Marcus said. She thinks she's protecting herself. Let's make sure North Carolina law protects you first. Patricia stood. I'll call Ellison. We'll have the filing structure ready by Friday. Real power operated in quiet rooms. He drove from Patricia's office to his Aunt Dolores's house in Belmont, 40 minutes west on I-85. Dolores Webb was 74 years old. Built like a woman who had survived everything the century had tried on her, she met him on the porch with a glass of water and the look she'd been giving him since he was 9 years old. The one that meant she already knew most of it. Sit, she said. He sat. She let him talk. She was one of the few people who understood that he needed to say the thing out loud. Before he could act on it, that speaking was how he confirmed his own certainty. He told her about the phone, about the $22,000, about Derek Hollis and the BMW, and the account in Asheville, and the envelope with the key he had not yet identified the lock for. Dolores listened without interruption. When he was done, she was quiet for a moment. She looked out at the yard. Japanese maple his mother had planted by the fence 40 years ago, its leaves gone to deep burgundy in the October cold. Your mother told me something, maybe 3 weeks before she passed, Dolores said. She said, Dolores, that woman has been counting Marcus's money since the day she met him. Problem is, she never counted the right accounts. Marcus looked at the maple. Your mama also said she was watching Vanessa at Christmas dinner and something in her eyes was already gone, like she'd already decided and was just waiting for the paperwork. Dolores turned to look at him. She came back from that bathroom at Christmas, and she'd been in there too long, and when she sat back down, she wasn't nervous anymore. Your mama noticed. What was she doing in the bathroom? Dolores reached into the pocket of her housecoat and placed a photograph on the armrest, between them. It was a screenshot printed on plain paper, a text exchange between a number labeled V and a number he didn't recognize. The date was December 27th, Christmas dinner. The text from V read, I found it. Second bedroom closet, top shelf, behind the boxes. You were right. It's real. The response, how much? The response from V, enough. We move in spring. Marcus looked at the photograph for a long time. She showed me this before she passed, Dolores said quietly. She didn't want to worry you. She was going to tell you when she felt stronger. She paused. She didn't get stronger. He folded the photograph and placed it in his inner pocket next to his own phone. Who sent this to Mama? He asked. Vanessa's sister, Dolores said. Keisha, she's been sick about it for months. Some things, Marcus thought, came back around. He found out about Derek Hollis in full on a Tuesday. His investigator, a retired Charlotte Mecklenburg detective named Earl Sims, whom he had used twice before on business disputes. produced a file that included Derek's employment history, financial obligations, a civil judgment from 2021 he had never satisfied. Derek Hollis owed $47.00 to a former business partner in Greensboro on a breach of contract claim. He was 8 months behind on his BMW lease. His apartment in South Charlotte was listed under a corporate LLC that had been administratively dissolved by the Secretary of State's office in September, meaning he was, technically, squatting in a building whose legal entity no longer existed. The Patek Philippe on his wrist, the one Marcus had recognized at his mother's funeral, had been purchased on a store credit account that was 90 days delinquent. The man his wife had been building an exit with could not sustain his own life. Earl laid the file on the table in the quiet way he always did, without commentary. He was a man who believed that facts had sufficient eloquence. The photo she referenced in December, Marcus said. The thing in the second bedroom closet. She was looking for a document, Earl said. Best I can determine, a deed or a portfolio statement. Something she planned to use to estimate total asset value before a divorce filing. He paused. She was off by a significant margin. Marcus said nothing. That evening he went home and cooked dinner, a pot of his mother's chicken bog, because grief moved through him in practical directions, and he needed to do something with his hands. Vanessa came home at 6:45 and set her bag on the counter and kissed his cheek and asked how his day was, and he told her it had been fine, which was the most technically accurate thing he could have said. She lifted the lid on the pot and said it smelled good, and he said thank you, and they ate together, and she talked about a campaign pitch her team was preparing, and he listened and asked 2 questions, and she answered them, and the evening passed. She had no idea. He cleared the dishes, he wiped the counter, he ran his hand once along the charcoal tile backsplash he had cut himself in the kitchen of his mother's house where the woman who raised him would never stand again. Preparation is the work. The meeting was held on a Friday morning at Patricia Hines's office. Patricia had arranged the room with the deliberateness of a woman who understood space was a form of argument. The conference table was long and clean. Water glasses were placed at each position. The documents were stacked in a single organized column at the head of the table where Marcus sat. Present, Patricia Hines and her associate Ellison Park, Marcus Webb, Earl Sims, Marcus's CPA, a man named Gerald Oakes who had been managing his full financial portfolio since 2015, and who had never met Vanessa, not once, not by accident. Vanessa arrived believing she was attending what she'd been told was a mediation session that Marcus had requested to discuss some financial matters regarding his mother's estate. Her attorney, a junior associate at a downtown firm, who had not been fully briefed, sat beside her. Derek Hollis was not present. Vanessa sat down and looked around the table, and something moved across her face. A recalibration. She had dressed carefully. Professional, composed, with the kind of poised readiness that said she had expected this moment and was not afraid of it. She did not yet know what this moment actually was. Patricia spoke first. She was 61 years old and had practiced family law and financial litigation for 33 years, and she spoke the way people spoke when they had nothing to prove. Mrs. Webb, Patricia said, "We're here today because my client has become aware of several financial matters that require immediate legal clarification. We'll proceed through the documentation in order." She placed the first sheet in front of Vanessa. Bank records. The joint account with Derek Hollis in Asheville. Vanessa's deposits, dates, amounts, totals. Vanessa looked at it. Her attorney looked at it. Neither of them spoke. Patricia placed the second sheet. The savings bond account. Marcus's mother's account, the one Vanessa had closed in March. Closure date, balance at closure. The withdrawal transaction record showing Vanessa's signature on the authorization form. The beneficiary on that instrument was Marcus Webb, exclusively, Patricia said. His mother's estate passed through a protected trust that was never commingled with marital assets. The funds were not Vanessa's to move. Vanessa's attorney touched her arm. Vanessa moved it away. Patricia placed the third sheet. This one Gerald Oakes had prepared. It was a summary document, a single page, 3 columns, clean headers. Marcus watched Vanessa's eyes move down it. He watched the composure she had built for this morning begin to come apart at the edges, slowly, the way old drywall crumbled when you finally found the water damage behind it. The document outlined was Marcos Webb's personal and corporate net worth as of the prior quarter. It included his primary contracting operation, its gross annual revenue, and the net retained earnings over 14 years. It included 3 commercial properties, 2 in Charlotte, 1 in Raleigh, held in a blind trust established in 2012, before the marriage. Included a real estate investment fund he had been a limited partner in since 2014. It included a technology logistics company he had co-founded and partially divested from in 2019, retaining a 22% equity stake whose current valuation appeared on line 7. The total was listed at the bottom. Vanessa looked at it for a long time. She had no idea, her attorney said quietly, not to anyone in particular, and the words just sat there. Gerald Oakes folded his hands. Earl Sims looked at the window. Patricia said nothing. Marcus spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "The house on Archdale," he said, "purchased by me in 2012. It was never placed in joint title. It is not a marital asset. The deed has always reflected that." He paused. "You were counting money that wasn't yours to count, Vanessa, and you weren't counting what was." Vanessa looked at him. Her eyes were doing something complicated. "Marcus, the $22,000 from my mother's bond account will be returned in full through the estate recovery process Patricia is filing today. The $9,340 withdrawn from the joint account over the past 9 months will be addressed through the settlement. Anything else you want to add to that number, now is the time." Silence. "You brought him to her funeral," Marcus said. "That is the only thing I have said out loud that was not a legal matter." He stood. He gathered the folder in front of him. He buttoned his jacket. Vanessa's attorney started to speak. Patricia raised one hand and the woman stopped. Marcus looked at Vanessa once more. Her face was the face of someone standing in the wreckage of a calculation they had made a very long time ago, and finally understood was wrong. "You picked the wrong man to build against," Marcus said quietly. "I know how to build things that last." He walked to the door. He did not look back. The room was silent behind him. 8 months had passed like water through a pipe he'd fixed himself. Marcus Webb sat on the back porch of his mother's house, his house now, in the blue-gray quiet of an early June morning, a mug of coffee cradled in both hands. He had extended the porch over the winter, framing it himself over 3 weekends, running the boards with a precision that his foreman said was unnecessary, and Marcus had done anyway, because unnecessary precision was another name for craft. The Japanese maple his mother had planted 40 years ago was fully green now, broad-leafed and private. He had fertilized it in March and mulched the base, and told it once, while no one was listening, she would have liked how it had come in this year. His company, his full company, the one with the actual name and the actual portfolio, had closed on a $4.1 million mixed-use development contract in Raleigh the previous month. He had hired 2 new project managers and promoted his longest-tenured crew lead to operations director. He had also quietly endowed a scholarship at his mother's church, $50,000, renewable annually, for young men from the neighborhood going into skilled trades. His mother would have pretended to fuss about the amount. She would have cried privately where she thought he couldn't hear. There was a woman in the kitchen. Her name was Celeste. She had appeared in his life through his cousin Raymond's wife, who had said only, "She's smart and she doesn't perform." He had learned that this was accurate. Celeste was a structural engineer at a firm in Charlotte, which he found quietly, deeply funny in a way he had never fully explained to her. She asked good questions. She did not fill silence with noise. She had come by on a Saturday 2 months ago to help him hang a new gate, and had stayed for dinner, and then for the next 6 weekends after that, Neither of them had made any particular announcement about it. The coffee was good. The morning was still. He was, in this moment, entirely at peace. What had become of Vanessa reached him in pieces through channels he did not seek out. Her position at the marketing firm had not survived the professional gossip that accompanied a public financial fraud case, however quietly it had been handled. She had moved to a smaller agency in Greensboro. She was doing mid-level account coordination work, the kind she had done 11 years ago before the career she'd built, partly on the stability Marcus's income had provided, had elevated her. Her attorney had negotiated the settlement to a number far below what Vanessa had apparently hoped, because the house, as it turned out, never been hers to negotiate with. Derek Hollis had defaulted on the BMW lease in November. He was living, as far as anyone could determine, Greensboro as well. A studio apartment, a new job in sales that he'd taken after the LLC dissolution, unraveled the last of his business front. He had not attended any court proceedings. He had produced no rescue. Vanessa's mother had stopped returning her calls. Keisha sent the screenshot to Marcus's mother, had not spoken to Vanessa since the documents were filed. This was, in Marcus's estimation, the most complete form of consequence, the social cost that no lawyer ordered and no settlement addressed, but that arrived anyway, because people who love you eventually see you clearly. He heard about it through Raymond. He registered it. He moved on. Celeste appeared at the back door with her own coffee and looked out at the yard with the quiet proprietary ease of someone beginning to belong in a place. "Your maple is incredible," she said. "My mother planted it," he said. She nodded and stood beside him, and they watched the morning come in together, and neither of them needed to say anything else. Some things, he thought, were worth the patience to build right. He was free, he was solvent, he was unbothered. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.